All right. Welcome again to Full Circle. I believe I see my sound working this time, so that is spectacular. I don't know how many people realize this, but I missed a week because I was busy. And there was another week where I posted the video and it turned out I was talking on mute or something the whole time, so very wasted. But here we are. I am Chad, your host for Full Circle. Cheddar Caveman on all of the things that exist, and social media wise, that is. I decided, instead of my usual background, to do a little Christmas cheer on early season, and you may end up seeing my little werewolf husky show up just because of the fact that I'm sitting over here. So you've been warned. She's cute though, so if she's on the camera, really, it's an improvement over me anyways. So, all right, so we've got some big news today, and I forgot to get half of it, so excellent planning on my part, but we'll see how part one goes, and then we'll talk about part two. So part one, there was huge news today from Privateer Press, both in how they're going to be doing future releases, and the Errata dropped, the Errata part one, if you will, dropped. So we have a lot there to go over. I'm going to kind of hit on the high notes of the Errata, just kind of talk through it, and then we'll sort of talk circle implications mostly. So that information's out there. You can look at it. There's other podcasts that'll be talking about it. Like I said, I'm just going to sort of brush on the changes, and then we'll talk more about the ones that impact circle. So that's going to happen. And then if we have time, I just picked up my Storm Raptor. My second Storm Raptor is in the box. I was going to open it up for you, an unboxing, if you will. It's a pretty cool model. So if we have time, we'll do that. If not, that will be next week. We'll go over Storm Raptor, and I've played a few games with it. We'll talk about that and things of that nature. So let me go ahead and pull up this Errata. So bear with me here for a moment. It's a lengthy PDF. So I'm just going to kind of step through it first in order, and then if something really has an implication for circle, we'll go into further detail on it. So with the Errata document, you'll notice that they have some stuff listed like 4 times. That's because there's Prime and Primal, which both basically have all the same rules, and there's the small digest versions of those, and those again all do have the same rules, but the page numbers are different, and they want to be able to, if you're reading that page number, to be able to go to it. So I'll just touch on things as they come up in the document, and if they're repetitive, I'm just going to keep going. So the first thing on the first page, there's a change to flight. This is basically just cleaning up the rules. No big deal here. A change to melee range. So this was clarified somewhat recently, where models had 360 melee ranges, even though they could only attack in their front arc, which meant the rules like flank and gang, dark shroud, those are the relevant ones I can think of right now, would happen no matter where you were. They've updated that rule to say your melee range is limited to your front arc. So, and then if you are a model that is able to attack outside of the front arc, it will specify. So not a huge change, but one you should note positionally. It's pretty important to like Una and Tanith lists, and any of our things with gang, which is mostly Bloodweavers, and I think that's it now. It used to be the Death Wolves, but not anymore. Another huge change on this page, power attacks. A model cannot target a friendly model with a power attack. So this is relevant to the entire game. It's both a buff and a nerf, depending on how you look at it. I think it's a good way to clean this up. I think the only further step from here would be if they decided you just can't target friendly models with attacks at all. I've been told this was tested at some point and was sort of a mess with, if you had a model in the way, jamming was a problem and things like that. So there are times where you really do just need to be able to target one of your own models to do a thing. So probably won't see that change, never know, but probably not. But power attack, not being able to power attack your own model. So this means you cannot headbutt your model, you cannot slam one of your models, which includes the power strike on the Colossals, and you cannot make a power attack throw targeting one of your models. The end result of this is some buff, some nerf. So one way to deal with stealth, because throws don't affect stealth, is to throw one of your models at an important stealth model. I don't find myself doing it a lot, but it is there. Can't do that anymore. A way of dealing with high defense things is to put a model that is relevant to you, that you could position so that you could throw or slam it. Can't do that anymore. So overall, this change was basically made because there were a bunch of abuses to primarily the throw power attack with models that couldn't be knocked down. In minions, you would see Scarith get thrown to end up threatening about 26 inches. So that was obviously a bit egregious and had to be stopped. This is their way of doing that. I think it also turns off a lot of other potential abuses of it. It's kind of a weird, janky thing. Like, I'm going to throw my own trooper model at the enemy. So I see why they made the change they made, but it does turn off some strategic play that has kind of always existed. So important to note there. It also helps us. Una's feat, one of the things that people would like to do, especially if they had inaccurate but powerful guns, would be to like throw something at a griffin to knock it down so that they could shoot it in and not worry about the melee penalty, or slam their models into them and things like that. So that's kind of a buff for her. In general, it's just a change that you want to. All right, looks like I'm moving again. So where we left off was talking about the change to power attacks. You can't power attack your own models anymore. So we'll move on. There's a change to sprays, so we have quite a few effects with sprays, and I haven't actually looked at the full text for spray, but it says to ignore, basically clouds that are terrain are not going to block line of sight for sprays. So like a forest or an obstruction will actually stop things from happening. The clouds were doing that too because hazards are considered terrain. So this is just a cleanup for that. No, apologies. I have a feisty doggy on my hands. Go lay down. No avoiding it tonight, unfortunately. So anyways, that's not a huge change. Most people were probably playing it that way up until just recently when they ruled on that, but so that's a cleanup. The next big change is going to be to Massive, the rule that governs battle engines, colossals, and gargantuans. There's a rule that says they can no longer be affected by grievous wounds. So this is pretty important. Being able to keep those models repaired or healed, and a lot of them have, especially gargantuans, have mechanics to heal themselves. And you put a model that expensive in a list, and you don't necessarily want to have to bring a shield guard for an Alt Ashley, who we'll get to. He also received a nerf. So that's important as far as it's huge. So in Circle, it's obviously going to apply to the Storm Raptor, the Celestial Fulcrum, and the Woldrath, and I suppose in the Minion battle engines, should you choose to play them. And what that's going to do is, in a lot of lists that I was looking at playing a Woldrath, especially a Woldrath, because we have a lot of repairs for it. We have the Shifting Stones for it. It repairs itself. Baldur can heal it. Bradigus can repair it. What this does is makes that... So I'm not looking so hard to think, like, do I need to bring a shield guard with this? Because now I don't feel like I will, right? Just can't turn it off. Makes that a viable strategy. Whereas before you're like, well, I can put a lot of healing and have this like Woldrath that is sort of unkillable if they can't put a ton of damage into it right away, and then maybe I can mitigate that otherwise and then repair it up every turn. Except if they bring Kane 2 or Alt Ashley, and then I'm done. So So great change, I think. You're spending, I think, minimum, well, 30 for the. I don't know if it matters so much for the battle engines, but it's a big deal for gargantuans. The one battle engine it really matters for is the protector one, where I think it needs being able to turn off its ability to repair kind of brings it back into, but that's just something we're gonna have to play around now. So that's a big change. It's an important change. I think it makes the Wold-Wrath even better than it was, and it's pretty good. So that's great. It's probably relevant for the Storm Raptor, although they play a little differently, so probably not as much. But all of our casters can heal that, of course, so it matters there. And it's important to like Trolls and Scorn as well. So more so just because they have beasts that have ways of healing outside of the norm. So good change. Just another one to note. It's not a huge deal. There's a cleanup here on Frenzy where it uses the highest POW melee weapon. Before it just said highest POW, so technically you were supposed to make ranged attacks if you could. If that was the highest POW you had. Alright, just scrolling through here because there's some redundant stuff. There was a change to impact attacks. It's just a little cleanup that the model turns to face before making the impact attack, so there isn't any weird stuff going on with that. More sprays, massive. Alright, model errata. I'm just going to touch on the ones that aren't circle really quickly, and then we'll move on. So first one, this goes through standard privateer press order. So Captain Alistair Kane, Kane 2, was errated to in two ways, although one I think is just a cleanup. The relevant one is right now he has 3 shot types. I think it's called attack types, and they have changed those to be called empowered shots. So what that means is those things cost him a single focus. So if he wants to do a trick shot, it costs a focus per shot. If he wants to do a grievous wound shot, he's got to pay 1. If he wants to do, I think the other one's blessed, he's got to pay a focus. So you'll probably never see that other one. No, I'm sorry, it's Black Penny. I think it's Black Penny. Either one, either one of those, he has to pay for. Given most buffs are less than +3, unless they're stacked in some way, he's probably better not paying to try to like just boost the attack if he needs to. It's the same focus with probably more upside. So but the other two are relevant. So one of the big problems with Kane was grievous wounds. He was just, you would cripple a whole army of war beasts or warjacks and take out systems if you could, and they couldn't do anything. And we talked about why grievous wounds is a problem before, and he can still do that a little bit, but like before he could just do it himself, and now at least his army has to contribute to that. And then if he wants to pay, like, okay, well, the grievous wounds shot here and here still makes sense. It's a pretty big change. The trick shot also, I mean, Kane is Rat 9 and could take Rangers to bring that up to Rat 11, and then he could take 9 shots in a turn without teleporting, or like 6 if he still wants to teleport, and that's the effect of 12 dead trooper models, and that's a lot, and that's every turn. It's every turn, so that's a huge amount. I think this is a sane change to Kane. I'm sure Signar players aren't thrilled about it, but I don't want to get too deep into that. There's a change to his feet. I'm pretty sure it's just a cleanup though, so I'm not going to go into details. There's some clarification on Darius's crane. Again, not a big deal. Haley 1, her temporal barrier no longer debuffs defense, only speed, and her warjack points were adjusted. So don't care about the warjack points. That's a Signar list building problem we're not going to get into. But changing that spell is pretty big for her. Means she's got to bring stuff like Rangers now again, if she wants, or what have you. That spell's probably now sort of a little expensive for 4, but a little too good to cost 3. So it probably puts her in an awkward place where you're not going to see her on a Signar in a while. This was a pretty unanticipated change too, so we're contending with that. Major Victoria Haley, so that's Haley 2, has 2 changes. Yes, 2 changes. Big one is she no longer has deflection, instead she has force field. So the relevant part of that is No blast damage to her, no collateral damage to her, and she can't be knocked down. So, not like a high defense caster having a spell that she can upkeep that says she can't be knocked down is pretty big. So, this is sort of a buff for her, but only for her and not her army. So, it's still technically not as powerful of a spell, but a lot of her gameplay that she's been seeing lately has not been taking advantage of deflection anyways. So I think this is actually kind of a net gain for her, or at the very least it's a total neutral, just like a parallel move. And Time Bomb is changed to no longer affect anything but the directly hit model. So with an AoE 4, I mean, she could just drift this at stuff or get min drifts and debuff a whole pile of things, which was still often the wrong play anyways. I saw a lot of like amateur, I don't know, that's probably a bad word, newer Haley players or less experienced Haley players who would cast it a lot, and it honestly is not her best spell. It has uses, but now it has a few less uses because you're not really stopping things, so it's going to be pretty corner case. She's going to need things like to kill low armor troops with it because it's still 4-inch AoE, or if a model really, really needs to not be in a specific spot, so, and like coupled with TK probably. So, decent nerf to her. It's not going to change how often we see her too terribly much, I don't think, so not a big deal. They cleaned up some stuff on the Stormsmith Grenadiers, the Minuteman, and Striker, so nothing too noteworthy there. We go to Protectorate. For all intents and purposes, no change. We expected High Reclaimer. They apparently tested it and found it is still fine. So we'll see if that maybe shows up later down the road or if it turns out to be fine. A lot of changes in Khador, probably the most, or the most outside of Crix anyways. Karchev's feat was changed to no longer boost melee attack rolls, only damage rolls now, and they have magic weapons. So for Circle, it's great. That's probably enough that we're going to not see some Karchev for a little while. Maybe. But it's a great change. It means he's going to be leaning more back on things like Juggernauts, Ruin, and the higher mat jacks. That would be my guess. Like I said, I also expect with the depth of Khador's bench that he just becomes benched for a little while. So there's that. There's some cleanup to Grave Door for Zerkova 1, I believe. The Behemoth's point cost went up to 25, so they just decided he was a little too good, needed to go up. I don't really expect to see any less of him, but it's going to cost a little more. Berserkers went up to 9 points instead of 8, so this is off of the, and we'll get to the Mad Dogs in a minute, but it's alphabetical. But this is a change basically because you just can't have a Jack with that kind of armor and boxes that's less than 9 points, really. I think that's really the deal. The Demolisher just has a cleanup to where his ranged attacks come from. Destroyers got a little cheaper. I think that's cool. Now you can get, I don't know what they were before, but for 14 points, that seems like a pretty decent Jack to bring along. But again, we won't get into that. That's Khador's problem. Maybe we may see more of them. Devastators were clarified that they're not affected by their own Reign of Death. Mad Dogs, this is a big change. Both went up to 9 points, and they replaced Jury Rigged with Fleet. So this was the change that Chris Davies, active player, if you will, mentions. And back a little while ago is what he suggested. That's both versions of it. And frankly, again, you can't have, I don't think you can have a heavy Jack with that stat line any cheaper than that. That said, it's probably now expensive enough that Khador players are unlikely to be playing them for a little while. I think that's fine. They've got plenty of other Jacks to play. Not the end of the world. Marauders got a siege weapon. Had the text replaced to say the weapon gains an additional die to its damage rolls against huge base models. So it makes it pretty situational, but that's an interesting change. It makes them sort of a specific weapon against a Colossal or Gargantuan. So if you're playing a Woldrath or a Stone Raptor or Fulcrum, watch out if your opponent is playing Marauders. Spriggans just had a little cleanup. Winterguard Infantry got a little cheaper. And Kovnik Joe had his boosted attack rolls traded out for +2 to attack rolls, which I think should even him out a little bit better. So I expected he would go up in points or maybe just become a veteran leader or a few other things. I think this is a sufficient change. On to Cricks, so there's quite a few here. I'm going to kind of just churn through them. But Lich Lord Asphyxius, which is Lich 2, got more Warjack points. Caustic Mist now works sort of like the other cloud effects that cost 2 in the game, except for it applies continuous corrosion instead of the -2. And his feat was changed to D3 plus 5 models, and I think it was D6 plus 3 before. So a little bit more consistency with the feat. He can protect his army a little bit. I think, and he's got more Warjack points. So I think this brings him to a playable position. In fact, if the sort of like a lot of heavies, especially heavies in the War Machine side of things, continue to be in the game, this is going to be, I think he's actually going to be good if that's the case, because he can kind of double deliver some hard-hitting weapon masters. We'll see. I'm not playing Cricks. A little cleanup to the Corruptor, nothing big. The Bane Warrior Officer now has Tough, so I don't know if that makes it enough to that Crick spoilers will take that, but just note now if you see the old UA, it has the old Tough and Rise still, doesn't have Stealth, so I think they're probably still in a place where I'm pretty okay with that. Brute Thralls gain Shield Guard, so that's going to be, I think that's going to be big. We'll see. I don't know if it's big enough to like entice a bunch of Crix players back. I think Crix is still sort of finding their footing. But overall, that's a good change for them, and it's something we should watch out for. And the Sepulchre could make Brute Thralls, just something to keep in mind. The Revenant crew got cheaper, so maybe that's enough for us to see them on the table. And the Scarlet Commander, which attaches to Bile Thralls and Mechanothralls, went up slightly, but gives AD to those units. So they're getting in your face a little faster, helps them mitigate a little bit of ranged attacks coming in because they get across sooner. I like it. Nothing is Circle to worry about too much there. Wraith Engine got cheaper. Again, I don't think that's a big deal. In Retribution, Lord Arcanus Ossian traded Deadeye for Fortune, which is good. Deadeye was pretty ridiculous on the caster who could buff everything else about his ranged game. So Fortune applies to everything, but it's only a reroll rather than an additional die, so it's a significant nerf, and it's a necessary one. There's a little cleanup to Download Viros, and their battle engine also got a little cheaper, so might see it more. That's about it. Father Lucant traded his Deflection for Deceleration. Good change, and one we should watch out for because I think it brings him back to being pretty prominent. And as a result, this is a spell that buffs armor against ranged attacks instead of defense. So that synergizes a lot better with the models in that faction and is going to be a pretty big deal. So I like the change, and it means we may see Lucant, so watch out for that. Perforators got cheaper, Enigma Foundries got cheaper. There's a little cleanup on the ionization servitors. Nothing big. Mercenary changes, cleanup on Blaze, cleanup on the Basher. And then as we go down here, a very, very relevant change to us. The Ogren Boker is now a mercenary minion Rulik solo, and he plays for all of the Hordes factions, which means Circle, Legion, Scorn, and Trollbloods, and that by default means minions. This is super, super, super big. This guy's 5 points. He hits decently hard in melee. He can do slams. And most importantly, for 5 he brings us a 5-point shield guard option. This is sort of something Circle has been asking for a lot, and now we have it. Excuse me. Sorry about the interruptions tonight. And that's huge. I mean, I just picked up, I had one before because my wife plays Crix. I have a second one now because they play for Circle. And this might be the biggest change on here, in my opinion. It's going to take a little while before we see it, but now this gives us a cheap ADR option. 5 points for one of them, 10 points for two is pretty huge. The clientability on this guy is not nothing to scoff at either. He, like I said, he's hard to kill. He's defense 13, armor 18 effectively because he has a shield. He's got 8 wounds. He's only 5 points, And for those games where you need to have a turn of I need to take a shot off of this, or I need an important shot not to hit because it applies some ability. Big deal. It's a very big deal. I think it's probably the biggest deal for Circle because we don't have a shield guard that's less than 17 points right now. I mean, Loki's going to be a shield guard, but I don't expect him to be less than 17 points. Frankly, I'd be very shocked if that were the case. And so this is just this is an option we didn't have that we have now. So it's clearly above. And it's fantastic. So I haven't really thought of where this is going to go or what lists need it. I've definitely thought as soon as I'm playing ADR, like it might just be the first thing I do is drop 2 of those in some lists, like Tanith Una, for example, are on the list, and they're probably the strongest options out of the 4 that we have. And being able to just say, okay, well, Tanith is going to be my drop into Signar, and here are 2 Ogre and Pokers, and now all of a sudden that's going to make my game into Sloan or Kane 2, who ignore stealth, and a lot of our other ways of mitigating it are going to make them fantastic. So I'm pretty excited about that change. We'll see how it plays out. More to come on that, but definitely take note of that. And if you've been thinking like, oh, I wish I had a shield guard for this list, there you go. Okay. The Siege Crawler also has the Siege Weapon, so it's a Weapon Master against huge base models. And then we get into the Hordes Errata. Madrak 2 was cleaned up, so he is no longer affected by his feet. That was a change we thought might happen. Madrak 3 just got some rules clarification, some little text. I'm not sure what it is. The Night Troll goes up to Mat 6. Might mean we see it. Not going to hold my breath. Trollkin Sluggers got cheaper and go to Rat 6. I don't play Trolls. I'm told that's not enough. I feel like it's a pretty good change. We'll see. That's a pretty cheap unit for having POW 13 guns, so we shall see. All right, on to Circle. So we had a total of 4 direct changes. And some of them are at no surprise at this point. So Wormwood's feet has been errated. There's a cleanup to just mark his speed as dash. No big deal there. But his feet Black Roots was changed back to essentially what it was in Mark II, which is his command range rather than control range becomes a forest. So back to 10 inches. And I suppose the $1 million question here is this change, is this enough? Does this mean he's unplayable? Where does this put Wormwood? My opinion is, A, it's going to make the lists that focused around the battle group a lot stronger. Which is what we're seeing now anyways, because you can get your battle group into a smaller area easier. I think it's enough that he can't just sort of like no-brainer win some of the scenarios that he was probably winning. So that's kind of big. I don't think it makes him unplayable. I played a ton of him in Mark II, and that was his feat in Mark II, and I was definitely able to keep things safe in Mark II, and forests weren't as good then. So, what does it mean? Ultimately, I think it means we still see Wormwood, but I think it means that there's room for a few other things to play in our faction in that area as well. But I think if you liked playing Wormwood, keep playing Wormwood. And he may still be the best drop into most of the ranged shooting that's out there. I'm not sold on that, but it might still be him. But I do think this starts putting things back into the equation. You may want to start playing like a Baldur 2 instead of a Wormwood. You may want to try out Kruger 2 again, who I'm hoping to get some play that I like with him and try it out. And you may just start looking at your list build more than anything. So that's what's going on with that. The next changes are the War Beasts, so these are both buffs. The Wold Warden's gets 1 additional point of strength, so it's strength 12, making his weapon, making his fist POW 16. I love that it's a point of strength because that affects throws. He makes a 6-inch throw, which is always helpful. And he does more damage on slams and the like. It's overall a pretty small change. I don't know. This isn't enough to be like, oh my god, we need Wold Wardens in every list. It is enough to go, I think I can put a Wold Warden in this list because I want to Geomancy so badly. and not feel quite as bad about it. So I do have a couple lists where I've sort of theorized them. You want some strong synergies with the spells. You need to be using Geomancy with them, or I don't think they're worth playing still. Or some very specific world buffs, and ideally both. So I think they're viable in Bradigus right now. I think that I have a Kruger 1 list I want to try out with Storm Raptor, where they're taking advantage of the Forked Lightning spell. And we have several spells that are like POW 13s, like Baldur 1, Morvana 1, and anybody with Rift. The other two are range 10, Rift's only range 8. So some good stuff there. I think we'll see if it shakes out. I mean, I think if you didn't like playing them before, that's fine. I don't think that this does so much that you have to be like, I'm going to go out and buy a bunch of Wold Wardens I didn't have. But I think it's a little better and gets you to try it a little more. So I'm excited. It's a good change. We'll see. I would have liked to see it accompanied by like a 1 point decrease, if I'm being fair, but nonetheless, good change. So one more change to Circle. Two more rather. One more Wold. The Wold Weird's Arcane Strike, that's the name of his ranged weapon, goes to POW 12. That is actually a massive change for us. So POW 12 means, and he's Rate of Fire 3. You can get 2 boosted range 12s. You can get an additional die in those with Purgation. He has Witch Hunter. Like, it makes the gun important. It makes the gun relevant. It's still in range 10, but it's a speed 7, range 10, POW 12 gun with an animus that is not irrelevant. It's 9 points, which is on the steeper end of things, but I think that's fine. And POW 12 is kind of what we've been asking for all along. Like, I've looked at this beast many times, and I'm like, why does this medium-based, very large Woldbeard have a lower POW than the Wold Stalkers in the unit? We haven't talked about yet, but we will. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. So I'm glad the change happened for thematic reasons, but then also functionally, like, now I have a Rat 6 POW 12 gun that I have access to, and we have debuffs. There are a lot of spells that aren't direct arm and defense buffs out there. It synergizes with the Pure Blood to give it blessed anyways. It has a magic gun. And speed 7. Like, it's fantastic. This stat line's not great defensively at 13-16 in like 20 boxes. But this guy's gonna. I would say if you've been waiting to test this guy, now is a good time to start trying him out and whatnot. So I'm very excited about that. I was worried they were gonna kind of stop at Power 11, and they didn't. They went to Power 12, and that's fantastic. For 9 points, I kind of expect to get a light that has a decent gun, if it's going to be ranged light. So it's still Fury 2. It still has a relevant animus. Anybody who supports a decent range game, they'll look for it. I think it's pretty interesting. Even with Bradigus, it's pretty interesting with the feet. It gives it a... let's see. It has a 17 to start with. Another 5 is... It has a 22-inch threat range. That's pretty scary for some casters. Like, you better hope you can hide. It's kind of all in, but it's there. So just something to think about. I really like that change. I think it means we should play that some more. We'll see what comes up with it. I'll probably re-review it or start talk about it maybe in the context of list if I get a chance to play it some. So and one more big change to Circle. So Central Stone and Mannequins not touched as much as we thought they would be. Basically, two small changes. One, the mannequins now have to be put in play during your maintenance phase, or the mannequin, if you have less than 3, you get during your maintenance phase. So this stops the, kill your own mannequin to get a surprise spray off type situation, which is good. I don't think that was ever really intended to happen. The same change happened to the Hellmouth as well, so I'll just gloss over that later. And it's also now capped at 3 Fury, where before theoretically it could get 5, that's fine. I think they're taking the role here that they want to do incremental changes, because it's kind of a niche way of us protecting ourselves from ranged armies right now. So I would say they're probably still extremely close to auto includes in your lists. I don't think they're strictly necessary. I don't know that I thought before they were strictly necessary. I'm sure if you listen to a few other podcasts and circle players, they will disagree. I can't say that if you put them in a list, I think that you're wrong. And we'll see if this is an incremental change enough. If it's not, I imagine we'll see them on Errata dock in the future. But Sentry Stones are still in the you should have them area. So great to see that. Great to see that that didn't hit us any harder. Since a lot of the like Sloan style ranged attacks, Kane and such are pretty, and Legion shooting are pretty rough on us. And without this, we do have the shield guard now, but I don't know. It kind of limits us down to like a few casters to play into that. So we'll see if there's more changes, but I'm pretty happy with that. There's a small little tweak to the wording, to some cleanup on shifting zones. And that's it for the circle changes. Scorn, no changes yet. That's coming down the road. Legion, Bethane just got a feet cleanup. The Afflictor's defense is 13. I don't know what it was before. It's increased, so it's probably 12. A little cleanup on Blight Wasps. The Nephilim Soldier gained Brutal Charge, so that's cool. Nothing big deal. Zuriel got more power and strength. Hellmouth got a little cleanup on its back attack. I don't really know. It's not really a big deal. It, like I said, gained the rule where it has to put the thing in play during your maintenance phase, and they're soulless. So something to keep in mind if you're playing one of our casters that cares about souls. Also buffs them with Callus. In minions, Caliban just got a cleanup. Midas got a little cleanup. Getterman Posse got cheaper. No big deal there. I don't know that they got cheap enough to play, but they got cheaper. Alton Ashley went up to 6 points, so he was everywhere because the Grievous Wounds gun that's range 14, power 12 is good. And it's even better against War Beasts, so he went up a point. Good change. It's a fine change. I think at 6 points, I leave him out of my list most of the times. Even at 5, I was already feeling that way, but others obviously weren't, and he was obviously doing well for them, so it's good. Lanissa Rissel goes up to 4 points. No shock here. We saw that coming a mile away. I think the only time I probably am playing a Blackclad in place of Lanissa most of the time for the friendly faction buff. They both have Prowl. They both have a solid stat line. But the Blackclad has a spray, which is more relevant, and he has phase jump, which is situational, but less situational than Winter Storm, and the spray is better than the Ice Bolt, and then they both have Hunter's Mark. So unless your list is specifically going into Legion, because the fact that the attacks are boosted is relevant on Lanissa with the Vendetta, or you're going to I think with Wormwood, Lanissa may still be the correct play because Winter Storm could be relevant there. If you have anything else that's putting enough terrain in the way, that could still, again, be relevant. But for the most part, if you didn't want to play Lanissa before and you're like, why don't people just play Blackclads? Now there's no reason not to play Blackclad, in my opinion. So, not a shock there. Back where we expected she would be. You can still play her too, I think. I don't think that it's that much of a difference. If you need 3 sources of Hunter's Mark, then play all 3 of them. Although 12 points is a lot for 300 marks. And then there's some cleanup for theme forces, basically. I think this was all intended stuff originally. So that's the errata document. As far as Circle, a little light. I think that's good. I think as far as the game, Karchev's Mad Dogs were probably the biggest problem out there. I know some people are going to say it's Unis Griffins, but I'm not. They're very good. We'll see. I'm not sold that is the biggest problem in the game right now. There were a lot of calls for High Reclaimer and Haley 3 to be nerfed. That's not happening. Probably still fine. Yeah, So that's the errata. The throw change is pretty globally big. I don't know that any of this is overly problematic for the game. I think it's all good changes for the game. I think the game will be stronger for this. I think a lot of people thought that there would be more changes, and I'm glad there weren't. A lot of people always think that they know what their changes should or shouldn't be. And again, I'm glad. Privateer doesn't necessarily always listen to everything that is said on the internet about what should or shouldn't happen. So I'm excited for some more theme forces and things like that to maybe inform a few more directions and sort of make a few more things relevant. I think we have a lot of infantry, for example, that hasn't really seen a lot of love yet, and I think there's some space for those themes to maybe make that happen. So another announcements. We are, speaking of theme forces, we'll talk about that real quick. So the errata dropped today. There's more information that Privateer dropped today. I'll get to that in a moment. They also said that every faction will be getting a theme that hasn't gotten one yet or isn't about to. So we'll be getting one of our two in January in that list, and then we'll get the other one in February, right at the beginning when the book comes out. So that'll be cool. I'm excited. I would speculate that if we're getting two, like Trolls had, that one will be world based and one will be living war beast based because they're very battle group core of the faction centric. So that's what I would expect there. The Scorn errata is coming later, so we may touch on it, but it would probably be more of an aside, like, yeah, it happened, and there was good stuff for Scorn or bad stuff for Scorn, or, something. We'll see. The other big change, just to kind of get, this is going to be a news and announcement episode, I can tell. The other big change that happened is Matt Wilson announced basically that as far as the rules go, and I'm going to summarize it down to two changes, but as far as the rules go, they are now starting in March, basically, that War Machine and Hordes is now, rules-wise, a digital game. That doesn't mean that you can't get physical cards. They'll have a print service and they'll have PDFs you can print out. But as of then, or as of that, when that starts, they're basically a digital game. So they're going to be leveraging War Room in digital ways so that they can update cards on a more regular basis. Because part of the problem for things like this is they can't always be updating things because they have to send them to a printer. The same goes for books. They're not going to be putting, after the command books, which are already scheduled and sent to the printers, they will not be putting model entries into these books. They're going to put other things. They're going to paint guides. They're going to have the theme force rules in them. There's going to be some lore. They may tweak. It sounds like this is a work in progress to a degree, but they're not putting model entries in there. And part of the thing is people were like, well, I bought this book, and now the model entries are wrong in here, so I have to go read this ponderous PDF document to see what that's really supposed to be. And, like, we live in an internet age. This is just not necessary. I know some people are probably upset that they're like, well, I don't want to use War Room. You can print the PDFs off. They're going to have a print service that you can use if you want to. I think it'll be fine. We'll see. You can get some tablets pretty cheap. Amazon has ones like 40 or 50 bucks. So if you need a War Room machine, that's the one I recommend. If you don't want to spend a lot of money, I mean. That's what I use right now. And in general, this is a great change. And that change is necessary for the bigger change, which is starting in March, all of their new releases will have a 4 to 6 week window of open playtesting, or a beta period, if you will. And that's going to start with the new Hordes faction that we don't know the name of. That's pretty big. A lot of people, myself included, saw that they didn't do an open playtest, and I actually thought that was probably ultimately good because we have a lot of voices and people think they know how to do game design, and like most people don't know how to do game design, even though they think they know exactly what the rules should and shouldn't be or what the problems are or aren't. And Privateer Press, in my opinion, has shown that they know what they're doing. But in Mark II, they did do a field test, and it helped do a lot of stuff, and a lot of people lamented that it wasn't there. And there's been a lot of, quote, bugs in the game since Mark III is announced, or at least people perceive them as being problems. And by doing this, 4 to 6 week window, even if there's only minimal things, like now you're getting it in front of, so stuff like Sloan being able to shoot into the deployment when Mark III release. 4 to 6 weeks is plenty of time. Somebody's going to find that, right? When you get this in the hands of thousands of people, it's going to be found a lot faster than when it's in the head of 10 or 13 or however many they have looking at it in house there, even their playtest groups, right? So that's pretty cool. That's pretty amazing. And it's putting themselves out there a lot. It means they have to go digital with their products, so that's why they're doing that. And I like the change. I play games like Heroes of the Storm, and every week they have, or not every week, but frequently they have patches. Sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small, sometimes it's got a new release, sometimes it doesn't. And they have a server, they put stuff out a week ahead, and people play with it. And usually they don't change much about it, but they have a couple times when it's been too much. So War Machine has the ability to do some of that. I personally think it's going to be a good thing. But that's a big change. It's a huge change for the company, and it's one that I'm sure they didn't take lightly. I think it's going to be the best change for us. You're still going to get people complaining that this thing should have been the way they think it should have been, or shouldn't have been the way they did it, or it's too powerful, or it's not powerful enough. We're going to have that forever. Or they're going to say, like, I told them to make this change and they didn't. Not everybody's changes are going to get made. Just because you like the way a thing was and it's pre-released doesn't mean you're going to like it when it is officially released. But it should hopefully tweak and prevent some of the big problems from happening that people are worried about, people see, or in the privateer press isn't seeing. I don't know if this means they will do similar things for errata docs. I would like to see that. I think there's definitely some things that could still benefit from a lot of errata. So, I haven't seen any questions float through the chat room. I was hoping to do the Storm Raptor unboxing, but I think I'm going to leave that for now till I'm either able to do maybe another special episode or next week, just because I'm running a little long and I'm probably going to have to edit this to splice some pieces back together anyways. But the errata was definitely important enough that I want to make sure that I talked about it. So for Circle, in summary, Wold Warden stock up tiny bit, Wold Weird's up a lot, Wormwood down a little, but probably still in the discussion for competitive play, or absolutely still in the discussion, probably still one of the more preeminent players. Changes to the other factions I don't think mean that we can take any of them lightly. Like I said, I would bet Madrak 2, Haley 1, and a few others take a backseat for a little bit. I don't think it changes where the strongest factions and weakest factions are either. So overall, it's been great. Real quick, like to just give a quick thanks to my sponsors, Griffin's Roost Painting. Eventually, that Storm Raptor is going to be painted by them, and it's going to be amazing. I'm really excited for that day. I'll have it on here for sure. That thing is so hard to carry. So that's coming. Anyways, I'd like to thank them. If you are looking for some pretty high-end paint skills, griffinsroostpainting.com or Griffin's Roost on Facebook. Send a message and see what they can do for you. And of course, Musa Minis for letting me host my show on their website. So I will hopefully get that up sometime tomorrow. I'd like to thank everybody for listening. Enjoy your holidays. If I don't have another show between now and then, I probably won't. And next time we'll look forward to unboxing the Storm Raptor, showing the fully assembled Storm Raptor, and talking about the Storm Raptor. And I'll be able to get a few more games in with it that way too. So again, thanks for watching.